Hey folks, welcome back. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt the pull of someone who seems to want you, but for some reason, they go completely silent? No texts, no calls, no effort to stay connected. Just distance. And yet deep down, you can feel it. They're still watching, still thinking, still feeling something. And that's what doesn't make sense, right? If they truly crave you, if they can't stop thinking about you, then why aren't they doing something about it? Why the silence? Why the hesitation? Most people assume that when someone goes quiet, it's because they've lost interest, that they've moved on, that they found someone else. And sometimes that's true. But other times, and this is what most people don't realize, silence doesn't mean absence of feelings. Sometimes it means the exact opposite. Because desire and fear, they go hand in hand. The stronger the desire, the more terrifying it becomes. And when someone isn't emotionally prepared to handle the intensity of their own feelings, when they don't know how to process what they're experiencing, they withdraw. Not because they don't want you, but because wanting you exposes something deeper inside them. Maybe they're afraid of rejection. Maybe they're afraid of losing control. Maybe they're so used to emotional detachment that the moment they start feeling something real, they panic. And that's where things get interesting. Because if you don't understand what's really happening beneath the silence, you'll react the wrong way. You'll chase, you'll overthink, you'll assume you did something wrong, and you'll start trying to fix something that was never about you in the first place. But once you understand the psychology behind silence, everything changes. You stop personalizing their withdrawal. You stop reacting emotionally. And most importantly, you stop playing a game that was never yours to play. So today we're going to break it all down. Why people go silent even when they crave you. The hidden psychology behind emotional withdrawal. And how, by handling this the right way, you can shift the power dynamic in a way they never saw coming. So sit tight, because once you understand this, you'll never see silence the same way again. Let's get started. Number 1, why they go silent even when they want you. Hey folks, let's talk about something that confuses almost everyone. Why someone who clearly wants you, maybe even craves you, suddenly goes silent. You've felt the connection, you've seen the signs. Maybe it's the way they look at you, the way they light up when you're around, or how they seem so invested in every little thing you say, and then out of nowhere, they disappear. No explanation, no warning, just radio silence. And now, you're stuck wondering, if they want me, why are they pulling away? Why not just say it? Most people assume silence means disinterest, that if someone really wanted you, they'd be upfront about it. But in reality, silence is often a sign of emotional conflict, not a lack of feelings. And if you don't understand what's really happening, you might react in a way that pushes them even further away. So let's break this down. There are 3 core reasons why someone goes silent, even when they want you. First, desire can be terrifying. Not everyone is comfortable with their emotions, especially if what they feel for you is intense. For some people, attraction isn't just about wanting someone, it's about what that desire reveals about them. And when they realize how much they care, it shakes their sense of control. Maybe they've been emotionally guarded their whole life. Maybe they've been hurt before, and getting close to you means opening up wounds they're not ready to face. So instead of leaning in, they withdraw. Not because they don't want you, but because wanting you makes them feel vulnerable. Think about it. The people who seem the most emotionally detached, they're often the ones who have the deepest fears about intimacy. They don't avoid you because they don't feel something. They avoid you because feeling something means they can get hurt. Second, power dynamics shift when emotions are involved. Let's be real, control matters. In relationships, in attraction, in social dynamics, people are constantly trying to balance who has more influence. And the second someone realizes they have more to lose, that they care more than they expected, they start to feel like they've lost control. They might go silent as a way of regaining that control, to test if you'll reach out first, to see if you'll chase, because the moment you do, the dynamic shifts in their favor. Now they don't have to be vulnerable, because you're the one showing your cards first. And this is where most people make a mistake. They react, they double text, they ask, is something wrong? They try to force an explanation. And in doing so, they give the other person all the power, confirming that their silence was effective in making you uncomfortable. But when you don't react, when you stay calm, when you continue living your life as if nothing happened, that's when they start to feel it, because suddenly, they're the ones questioning where they stand with you. And finally, the third reason, they assume they have time. People take things for granted when they think they have all the time in the world. They assume that just because you're interested now, you'll still be there when they're ready. That you'll wait, that your feelings won't change. So they pull away, thinking, I'll deal with this later. But what they don't realize is that time doesn't work in their favor. It works against them. Because while they're off trying to figure out their emotions, you're evolving. You're learning. You're becoming stronger. And by the time they decide they're ready, they might come back to a version of you that no longer needs them. And that's when they truly feel the loss. So here's the takeaway. If someone goes silent on you, don't chase. Don't beg for answers. Don't try to force them to acknowledge their feelings. Because the more you try to pull them back in, the more they'll feel the need to resist. Instead, be the person who doesn't wait. Because nothing is more powerful than someone who is okay with silence. Someone who doesn't react emotionally. Someone who lets people feel the weight of their own choices. And trust me, when you do that, when you stop making it easy, when you stop feeding the dynamic they're trying to control, that's when they start feeling what they were trying to avoid all along. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone pull away even when you knew they wanted you? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're done trying to figure people out and ready to just focus on you, type I move forward. If this message is resonating with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next, we're diving deeper into the psychology behind emotional withdrawal. And trust me, once you understand this, you'll never see silence the same way again. Let's move on. Number 2, the psychology behind emotional withdrawal. Hey folks, let's talk about something that messes with people's mind. One who clearly has feelings for you suddenly pulls away. It's frustrating, right? One moment, they're engaged, responding, showing interest. The next, they're distant, unavailable, and acting like you don't exist. And here's the thing. It doesn't always mean they've lost interest. In fact, sometimes it means the exact opposite. When someone withdraws emotionally, it's usually not random. There's something happening inside their head that makes them feel like creating distance is the only option. And if you don't understand what's really going on, you might take it personally, overreact, or worse, start chasing them when what they actually need is space. So what's going on here? Why does someone who wants you still pull away? There are a few key reasons, and once you understand them, you'll stop wasting time trying to decode someone else's silence. First, let's talk about fear. A lot of people think they're ready for deep emotional connection until they actually start feeling it. That's when the fear kicks in, because the more they care, the more they have to lose. Maybe they've been hurt before. Maybe they've spent years guarding their emotions, convincing themselves they don't need anyone. And now suddenly they're feeling something real. That level of vulnerability is terrifying for some people. So instead of leaning in, they do the opposite. They pull back, not because they don't want you, but because they're scared of how much they do. Then there's the issue of control. Relationships, attraction, even casual dating, there's always an underlying power dynamic. And when someone realizes they're starting to care more than they expected, they might feel like they're losing control. So what do? They create distance. It's not always intentional, but on some level they're testing the waters. They want to see if you'll reach out first, if you'll chase, if you'll prove to them that they still have the upper hand. And the moment you do, the balance shifts. Now they don't have to be vulnerable because you just showed your cards first. But here's where most people mess up. They react emotionally. They send that extra text. They ask, hey, is something wrong? They try to force an explanation. And the moment you do that, you confirm to them that pulling away works. That by creating distance, they can control how much you give. And once that dynamic is set, it's a cycle that repeats over and over again. Sometimes emotional withdrawal has nothing to do with you at all. Some people have been emotionally conditioned to detach whenever things get too real. Maybe they grew up in an environment where expressing emotions wasn't encouraged. Maybe their past relationships taught them that being vulnerable leads to getting hurt. So now, even when they want something real, their instinct is to retreat the moment it starts feeling like too much. They're not thinking, I need space because I don't care. They're thinking, I need space because caring this much feels dangerous. And then there's the biggest mistake people make when someone pulls away: chasing. It makes sense, right? Someone starts acting distant, so your first instinct is to close the gap. You want to check in, make sure everything's okay, remind them that you're still there. But that's exactly what you shouldn't do. Because the harder you try to pull someone back, the more they'll resist. It's like trying to grab onto smoke. The more force you use, the faster it slips through your fingers. So what should you do instead? First, let them feel the space they created. Don't rush to fill it. If they genuinely care, they'll notice the silence, and they'll have to sit with their own thoughts. That's where realization happens. Second, don't reward withdrawal with attention. If someone disappears without explanation, don't go out of your way to check in. If they care, they'll come back on their own. And finally, focus on yourself. Their silence isn't about you, it's about them. The more emotionally stable you are, the more they'll start to wonder why you're not reacting. At the end of the day, emotional withdrawal is rarely about a lack of feelings. It's about fear, control, and emotional conditioning. But what you do in response, that's where the real power lies. You can panic and try to fix it, or you can do the thing they never expected. Stay calm, stay steady, and let them feel the distance they created. Because when someone realizes that their silence didn't shake you, that their withdrawal didn't control you, that their absence didn't break you, that's when they start questioning everything. So tell me, have you ever had someone pull away even when you knew they had feelings for you? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're done overanalyzing and ready to stay in your power, type, I don't chase, I attract. If this message is hitting home for you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next we're diving into something even deeper. Why vulnerability feels scarier than rejection. You don't want to miss it. Let's move on. Number 3. Why vulnerability feels scarier than rejection. Hey folks, let's talk about something that doesn't make sense at first. Why vulnerability can feel even scarier than rejection. Most people think rejection is the worst thing that can happen. You put yourself out there, you get turned down, and yeah, it stings. But at least you know where you stand. At least you have an answer. Vulnerability, on the other hand, that's a different game. That's stepping into the unknown with no guarantees, no control, and no way of predicting how someone will respond. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying. Think about it. Rejection is painful, but it's clear-cut. You either get a yes or a no, and you move on. But vulnerability? That's opening yourself up, putting your emotions on the table, and hoping the other person values them enough to handle them with care. And if they don't, you're left exposed. That kind of uncertainty makes a lot of people shut down before they even get to the point of expressing how they feel. So why do some people avoid vulnerability at all costs, even when they crave connection? Why do they disappear right when things start getting real? For a lot of people, it comes down to control. The moment you let yourself be vulnerable, you're handing over a piece of yourself. You're saying, I care about this. This matters to me. And suddenly, the other person has the ability to hurt you in a way no one else can. That's why some people would rather keep things casual, act indifferent, or avoid deep emotional conversations altogether. It's not that they don't feel anything. It's that feeling something means losing control. And then there's past trauma. Not everyone was raised in an environment where vulnerability was safe. Maybe they grew up in a home where emotions were dismissed. Maybe they opened up to someone before and got shut down. Maybe they trusted the wrong person and got burned. Over time, those experiences teach them one thing: don't let people see the real you, because the real you can get hurt. So they build walls, not because they don't want love, but because love to them feels dangerous. You've probably seen this play out before. Someone pulls away just as things start to get serious. Maybe they get distant after a deep conversation. Maybe they disappear right when you think you're getting closer. And it's confusing because everything was fine, the connection was real. But then, suddenly they're gone. Here's what's happening. They're battling with themselves. On one side, they want connection. They want to be seen, to be understood, to feel close to someone. But on the other side, there's fear. Fear that if they open up, they'll get hurt. Fear that if they let someone in, they'll lose the sense of control they've spent years trying to maintain. And for some people, that fear wins. It's easier to withdraw, easier to act like they don't care, easier to sabotage something good than to risk being the one who cares more. And the irony? In doing that, they often create the exact outcome they were trying to avoid. They push away the very connection they secretly wanted. So what do you do when you're dealing with someone like this? The biggest mistake people make is trying to convince them that vulnerability is safe. Trying to reassure them, trying to prove that you're different. But the truth is, no amount of convincing will change someone who hasn't learned to embrace vulnerability on their own. You can't force someone to be ready. You can't make them see the value of emotional depth if they're still in a place where they see emotions as a threat. And the more you try to pull them closer, the more they'll resist. That's just how it works. The best thing you can do is be the person who isn't afraid of vulnerability. Lead by example. Be emotionally honest, not to get a reaction, but because that's who you are. And most importantly, don't reward avoidance with more effort. If someone is running from emotional depth, chasing them won't fix it. Let them sit with their own discomfort. Let them feel what it's like to lose access to someone who is offering them something real. Because at the end of the day, people who fear vulnerability always feel the impact when they realize they lost someone who wasn't afraid to show up fully. Have you ever dealt with someone who clearly had feelings for you but avoided deep conversations? Someone who pulled away when things got real? Drop your story in the comments, and if you're done waiting for people to figure out their emotions, type, "I choose real connections." If this message is speaking to you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next we're diving into something even more frustrating, the paradox of desire and distance. You don't want to miss it. Let's move on. Number 4. The paradox of desire and distance. Hey folks, let's talk about something that doesn't make sense at first, but once you see it, you'll start recognizing it everywhere. Why is it that the moment you pull away, they seem to want you more? Why is it that when you show too much interest, they start acting distant? It's frustrating, right? You put in the effort, you make yourself available, you show them you care, and suddenly they're pulling back like they need space. But the second you stop chasing, the second you start living your life without them, suddenly they come back around. Why does this happen? Why does distance increase desire? Most people think attraction is about availability, that if you show someone how much you want them, they'll want you back. But in reality, attraction is about tension. It's about the balance between wanting and wondering. When someone knows without a doubt that they have you, that they don't have to work for your attention, that you're always there, the excitement starts to fade. Not because they don't like you, but because the mystery is gone. Now, before you start thinking this is just about playing games, let me be clear. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding a fundamental truth in human psychology. We value what feels just out of reach. Think about it. Have you ever finally gotten something you really wanted, only to realize it didn't feel as exciting once you had it? Maybe it was a job, an achievement, or even a person. The thrill was in the chase, in the anticipation, in the uncertainty. But once you had certainty, the excitement slowly faded. This is why some people seem to lose interest the moment they feel like they have you. Not because they don't care, but because the challenge, the unknown factor, is what kept them engaged in the first place. And on the flip side, this is why the moment you stop chasing, the moment you start focusing on yourself instead of them, they start noticing. They start wondering what changed. They start feeling that shift in energy, and suddenly you're on their mind again. Not because you did anything manipulative, but because you created space for desire to exist. See, desire needs room to breathe. If you're constantly available, constantly reaching out, constantly proving your feelings, you're not giving the other person any space to feel that pull toward you. They don't get the chance to wonder about you. They don't get the experience of missing you. And without that tension, the desire fades. You might have seen this play out before. Maybe you were texting someone regularly, things were going great, and then suddenly, their responses started getting slower. They weren't as engaged. They seemed a little less excited. So what did you do? You tried harder. You sent that extra message. You overcompensated, thinking that more effort would bring them back. But instead of bringing them closer, it pushed them further away. And the crazy part? The moment you stopped caring, the moment you got busy with your own life, the moment you stopped reaching out, they came back. Suddenly they were checking in. Suddenly they were interested again. Suddenly they remembered how much they liked you. This is the paradox of desire and distance. So, what's the takeaway here? Do you have to play hard to get? Do you have to pretend not to care? Not at all. But what you do have to do is stop over-investing in people who aren't matching your energy. Stop assuming that effort alone will create attraction. Start recognizing that the space you create is just as important as the connection you build. Attraction isn't just about how much someone likes you. It's about how much they think about you. And people think about what they don't fully have. When you're always available, always responding, always there, they don't have to think about you. But the second you become a little unpredictable, the second you stop making them the center of your world, suddenly they start paying attention again. So if you've ever felt like someone wanted you more when you were distant, you weren't imagining it. It's real. And it's not about manipulation, it's about human nature. Now tell me, have you ever experienced this paradox? Where someone lost interest when you tried harder, but came back the moment you stopped caring? Drop your story in the comments, and if you're done chasing and ready to become the one who attracts effortlessly, type, "I choose my energy." If this message is speaking to you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next, we're talking about something even deeper, how people unintentionally push others away. You don't want to miss it. Let's move on. Number 5. How people unintentionally push others away. Hey folks, let's talk about something that happens all the time. How people, without even realizing it, push away the very person they want to keep. It's frustrating, right? You see it happen. Maybe you've even done it yourself. Someone gets close to you, the connection feels real, and instead of embracing it, you or they start pulling away. It's not always intentional. It's not like they wake up one day and think, "Let me ruin this." But somehow they still create distance. And the worst part, most of the time they don't even know they're doing it. So what's really going on here? Why do people push others away even when they want connection? And more importantly, how do you stop it from happening? One of the biggest reasons people push others away is fear of being hurt. It sounds simple, but it runs deep. Maybe they've been through heartbreak before. Maybe they've let their guard down in the past and got burned. So now, whenever something starts feeling too real, their instinct is to create space before they can get hurt again. You might have seen this happen before. Someone starts catching real feelings and suddenly they get distant. They stop texting as much. They act cold. They create problems where there weren't any before. And it's confusing because everything was going great, so why the sudden shift? Here's what's happening. In their mind, they're thinking, if I push them away now, if I create distance, maybe I won't get hurt later. It's a defense mechanism. They're trying to protect themselves from the possibility of rejection, heartbreak, or disappointment. But in doing so, they create the exact situation they were afraid of. They push away the person who actually wanted to be there. Another way people unintentionally push others away? They expect disappointment before it even happens. Some people have been let down so many times that they start assuming every new connection will end the same way. So even when someone treats them right, even when nothing is actually going wrong, they sabotage it. Not because they want to, but because on some level, they've convinced themselves that every good thing will eventually fall apart. You ever met someone who seems to look for problems even when there aren't any? Someone who overthinks everything, questions every good moment, always waiting for the catch? That's exactly what's happening. They're not enjoying the connection because they're too busy preparing for the worst. And then there's another big one, the fear of losing independence. Some people equate closeness with losing themselves. They think that if they let someone in, if they invest too much, they'll lose their sense of freedom, their individuality. So they push back, not because they don't care, but because they're trying to maintain a sense of control over their own life. It's the classic, I don't want to be too attached mindset. They want connection, but they also want to feel like they can walk away at any moment. And this inner conflict creates inconsistency. One day they're all in, the next day they're distant. Not because they don't feel something, but because they don't know how to balance their emotions with their need for control. But here's the truth. Real connection doesn't mean losing yourself. It doesn't mean sacrificing independence. It means choosing to let someone in while still keeping your sense of self. The people who get this are the ones who maintain deep, healthy relationships. The ones who don't, they keep pushing good people away over and over again. And then there's the most subtle, yet powerful reason people create distance. They don't believe they deserve the connection. This one happens more often than you'd think. Maybe they've been told they're not enough. Maybe they've never experienced real love before. Maybe they've always been in toxic relationships, and now when something healthy comes along, it feels unfamiliar. So instead of embracing it, they reject it. Not because they don't want it, but because deep down, they don't think they're worthy of it. And this is where most people make a mistake. They try to fix it. They try to prove to the other person that they're worth it. They overcompensate. They try harder. They become more available. But the problem? You can't make someone believe they deserve love. That's something they have to figure out on their own. So what do you do when you notice someone pushing you away? The worst thing you can do is chase. The more you try to pull them back, the more they'll resist. The best thing you can do? Let them feel the space they're creating. If they truly care, if they're truly ready, they'll recognize what they're doing and come back on their own. And if they don't, then they weren't ready to begin with. At the end of the day, connection is about two people choosing to show up fully. And if someone is constantly pushing you away, you have to ask yourself, am I chasing something that isn't ready for me? So tell me, have you ever had someone push you away even when it was clear they cared? Drop your story in the comments, and if you're done investing in people who don't know how to receive love, type, I attract people who are ready. If this message is resonating with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next we're diving into something powerful. How to handle silence with confidence. You don't want to miss it. Let's move on. Number 6, handling silence with confidence. Hey folks, let's talk about silence. That moment when someone stops responding, stops engaging, and you're left wondering what happened. Maybe things were going great. Maybe you thought there was a real connection, and then suddenly, nothing. No text, no explanation, just an uncomfortable void. And now, your mind starts racing. Did I do something wrong? Should I reach out again? Are they losing interest? This is where most people panic. They start overanalyzing, they send another message, they try to fix the situation. And before they realize it, they're giving away all their power. But here's the thing, silence isn't always a bad sign. In fact, how you respond to silence determines whether you gain or lose respect in the situation. Most people see silence as rejection. But the truth is, silence is a test. It's a way of seeing how secure you are, how confident you are, and whether you need constant reassurance. And when you handle silence the wrong way, by chasing, by getting emotional, by seeking validation, you end up failing that test without even realizing it. Think about it. When someone pulls away and you immediately react by sending another message, checking in, or questioning what went wrong, you're showing that their absence affects you too much. And when someone knows they can disappear and still hold power over you, they lose respect. But when you do nothing, when you stay calm, when you refuse to overanalyze, when you carry on with your life as if nothing happened, that's when they start to wonder. That's when they start questioning if they miscalculated your value. This is why the worst thing you can do when someone goes silent is chase. Because the moment you chase, you confirm that their absence has an effect on you. And that shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, they have control, and you're the one trying to regain their attention. But the person who holds the real power is the one who remains unshaken, the one who doesn't seek answers, the one who doesn't react emotionally, the one who treats silence as nothing more than empty space. Let's say you've been talking to someone, things seem great, and then suddenly they stop engaging. Most people would start panicking, wondering if they should send another message, checking to see if they're online, trying to decode what happened. But someone who understands their worth? They simply let the silence exist. They don't text again. They don't question. They don't assume the worst. They just continue living their life, knowing that if someone truly values them, they won't stay silent forever. And here's where things get interesting. At first, they might not notice. Maybe they assume you'll reach out. Maybe they think they can pull away and you'll chase. But then, days pass, a week, and suddenly, they start to feel it. They start to wonder why you haven't reacted, why you're not asking what's wrong, why you seem completely fine without them. And just like that, the roles reverse. Because when someone expects you to react and you don't, it creates curiosity. And curiosity is what brings people back. The reality is, people don't always go silent because they've lost interest. Sometimes they're testing the waters. Sometimes they're dealing with their own emotional conflicts. And sometimes they just assume you'll always be there. But how you respond to that silence determines whether they come back with more respect or whether they start taking you for granted. And here's the real question. What if they never reach out again? That's where true confidence comes in. If someone can go silent and never feel the need to reconnect, that tells you everything you need to know. They were never truly invested. And instead of wasting energy trying to figure them out, the best thing you can do is recognize their silence for what it is, a sign to move forward without them. Handling silence with confidence isn't about playing games. It's about understanding that your value isn't defined by whether someone reaches out or not. It's about knowing that if someone is truly meant to be in your life, they won't disappear without explanation. And if they do, that's their choice. But it doesn't have to affect your peace. So the next time someone pulls away, the next time you find yourself staring at your phone, wondering why they haven't responded, remind yourself that silence is just as powerful as words. And sometimes, the best response is no response at all. Have you ever had someone disappear on you, only to come back the moment you stopped caring? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're done reacting emotionally to silence, type, "I own my energy." If this message is speaking to you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next we're diving into something even more powerful: how to become irresistible without chasing. You don't want to miss it. Let's move on. Number 7, becoming irresistible without chasing. Fool. Hey folks, let's talk about something that changes everything. How to be the one they can't stop thinking about without ever chasing. Because let's be honest, the moment you start over-investing, constantly checking in, trying to prove your worth, you can feel the energy shift. Suddenly, they seem less interested. They take longer to reply. They stop making an effort, and you're left wondering what happened. The truth is, chasing kills attraction. Not because effort is bad, but because effort in the wrong places makes you look like you're seeking approval. And nothing is less attractive than someone who needs to be validated. Think about the people you're naturally drawn to. They're not the ones who seem desperate for attention. They're the ones who are comfortable in their own world. The ones who have a life so full that you want to be part of it. That's what makes someone truly magnetic. Not how much they try to impress you, but how secure they are within themselves. So how do you become that person? How do you shift from chasing to attracting? It starts with shifting the focus back onto yourself. Most people get caught up in worrying about whether someone is thinking about them. They spend hours overanalyzing texts, trying to figure out if they said the right thing, wondering why someone hasn't reached out. But the more you do that, the more you make someone else the center of your energy. And the more they feel that, the less interested they become. Now, imagine flipping that dynamic. Imagine if, instead of wondering about them, you were so focused on your own life, your own growth, your own goals, that you didn't have time to overthink. That's when everything shifts. Because the more you pour into yourself, the more naturally attractive you become. You stop needing external validation because you already feel fulfilled within yourself. And that kind of energy, people notice it. The key to being irresistible is not being overly available. People don't value what they can have too easily. If you're always the one reaching out, always the one initiating, always the one putting in effort while they're giving you the bare minimum, you're sending the message that your time and attention are not valuable. And when someone knows they can have you anytime, they stop valuing your presence. This doesn't mean you play games or ignore people to make them chase. It simply means you start living in a way that makes your time feel important. You have your own life, your own passions, your own priorities. And if someone wants access to your energy, they have to show up in a way that matches that. The best way to cultivate this kind of energy is by detaching from outcomes. The reason most people chase is because they're afraid of losing someone. But when you stop needing a certain response, when you stop placing your happiness in someone else's hands, you become incredibly powerful. You know that if someone truly values you, they won't disappear. And if they do, that's their loss, not yours. Have you ever noticed that when you stop trying, people suddenly become more interested? When you stop texting first, when you stop making them a priority, they start wondering about you. That's because attraction thrives on space. When someone expects you to be there and suddenly you're not, they start feeling your absence. And when they feel your absence, they start thinking about you. So instead of forcing something to happen, let people come to you. And if they don't, move forward with the confidence that the right ones will. When you carry yourself with the energy of someone who knows they bring value, you don't have to prove anything. You naturally draw people in. Becoming irresistible isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, but with more intention. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that people can feel it without you having to say a word. Because at the end of the day, attraction isn't about seeking attention. It's about becoming someone whose presence is felt, even when they're not around. So tell me, have you ever noticed that the less you care, the more people seem to chase? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're ready to stop chasing and start attracting, type, "I focus on me." If this message is speaking to you, hit that like button and subscribe, because next we're talking about the final shift, how self-respect changes everything. You won't want to miss it. Let's move on. Number 8. Final thoughts. How self-respect changes everything. Hey folks, let's wrap this up with something that shifts everything. Self-respect. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much someone desires you, how many games they play, or how many times they come and go. If you don't respect yourself, you'll always be caught in a cycle of seeking validation from people who don't deserve it. And that's what keeps so many people stuck. Chasing after someone else's approval, instead of realizing that the only validation that truly matters is the one you give yourself. Self-respect isn't about acting cold, playing hard to get, or pretending you don't care. It's about knowing, without a doubt, that you don't have to settle for half-hearted effort, mixed signals, or people who treat you like an option. Because the second you start accepting less than what you deserve, you're telling the world that it's okay to treat you that way. And that's where everything starts to fall apart. Think about it. How many times have you let things slide that deep down you knew weren't okay? How many times have you ignored the signs, made excuses for someone's behavior, or held on to something that wasn't giving you the same energy back? That's what happens when self-respect isn't your foundation. You become so focused on keeping someone in your life that you forget to ask the most important question. Do I even want this? See, when you respect yourself, you don't just take whatever is given to you. You don't wait around for someone to realize your worth. You don't keep proving yourself to someone who isn't showing up for you. Because you know that real connection doesn't require convincing. And the moment you stop seeking validation outside of yourself, the entire game changes. People who lack self-respect operate from scarcity. They hold on to toxic relationships because they're afraid they won't find anything better. They tolerate inconsistent behavior because they think love is about suffering. They chase after people who don't reciprocate because they don't believe they're worthy of something stronger. And that mindset, it keeps them trapped. But when self-respect is your foundation, you move differently. You're not afraid to walk away. You don't chase. You don't beg for attention. You don't stay where you're not valued, because you understand that your energy is a privilege, not a right. And here's the most powerful part. When you start carrying yourself this way, people feel it. They see it, and they start treating you differently. Because confidence and self-respect, they are magnetic. The people who once took you for granted, they start wondering what changed. The ones who thought they had you figured out, suddenly, they're second-guessing. And the ones who never stepped up, they realize you're not waiting around for them anymore. This is why self-respect is the ultimate shift. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about proving to yourself that you are enough, just as you are. That you don't have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's life. That you don't have to fight for a place where you were never meant to belong. Because here's the truth. People who truly value you won't put you in a position where you have to question your worth. They won't make you wonder how they feel. They won't give you crumbs and expect you to be satisfied. Real connections, they don't leave you confused. So if you've been chasing, over-explaining, proving yourself, stop. Not because you're giving up, but because you're rising up. You're stepping into a version of yourself that refuses to settle for anything less than what you truly deserve. And that's when everything changes. So let me ask you, what's one thing you're no longer accepting in your life? Drop it in the comments. And if you're ready to step into your highest self, type, I choose me. This has been a powerful journey, and I appreciate you for being here. If this message resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed, because this is just the beginning. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.